Whispers of the Cosmos. The night was unusually quiet at the Quantum Dynamics Research Center, nestled in the remote wilderness of Northern California. Dr. Marcus Reynolds, a brilliant xenobiologist with a reputation for unconventional thinking, sat hunched over his workstation, surrounded by holographic displays and intricate genetic models. At 38, Marcus had long since abandoned the traditional career path of most scientists. His obsession with extraterrestrial biology and potential non-carbon-based life forms had made him something of an outcast in mainstream scientific circles. Yet, he remained undeterred, driven by an insatiable curiosity that burned brighter than any academic recognition. The research facility hummed with a soft electronic rhythm. Rows of sophisticated equipment monitored various experiments, their blinking lights creating a mesmerizing dance of technology. Marcus's latest project focused on identifying potential communication patterns in electromagnetic signals that might indicate intelligent extraterrestrial life. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, manipulating complex data streams. Suddenly, an anomalous signal caught his attention. Unlike the countless false positives he'd encountered before, this transmission carried a distinct pattern, a rhythmic pulse that seemed almost intentional. "This is different," Marcus muttered, adjusting the signal's parameters. The transmission didn't match any known terrestrial or satellite communication protocols. Its complexity suggested something far beyond human technological capabilities. As he leaned closer to analyze the signal, the facility's lights began to flicker. The usual background hum of electronic equipment transformed into a high-pitched whine that made Marcus's ears ring. Something was happening, something extraordinary. Before he could activate the facility's emergency protocols, a blinding light filled the room. Marcus felt a strange sensation, as if every molecule in his body was simultaneously being stretched and compressed. The world around him dissolved into a kaleidoscope of ethereal colors and incomprehensible geometric patterns. When the disorientation subsided, Marcus found himself in an environment that defied all logical understanding. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with bioluminescent energy. Intricate, biomechanical structures lined what appeared to be a vast chamber, their surfaces shifting and realigning in mesmerizing, almost organic rhythms. "Fascinating," he whispered, his scientific mind already cataloging every minute detail despite the surreal circumstances. A series of clicks and resonant frequencies filled the air. Marcus turned to see three towering beings, clearly not human, yet possessing a structured, intelligent appearance. Their exoskeletons shimmered with an iridescent quality, embedded with complex technological augmentations that seemed to merge seamlessly with their biological form. The lead entity, distinguished by more elaborate technological integration, stepped forward. Its communication was not verbal, but a complex series of electromagnetic pulses that Marcus's mind somehow translated into comprehensible language. "You are necessary," the entity transmitted. "Your unique genetic potential will determine our survival." Marcus's scientific training kicked in, overriding his initial shock. These weren't random extraterrestrial visitors. They were a species facing an existential crisis, and he was their chosen solution. "What survival?" Marcus responded, both verbally and through an intuitive electromagnetic resonance he didn't fully understand. "What makes me so special?" The lead entity's response was a complex transmission of genetic diagrams, evolutionary trajectories, and desperate survival algorithms. Marcus realized they weren't just seeking help, they were pleading for a lifeline. His abduction was more than a random event. It was a calculated, species-level intervention. As Marcus began to comprehend the magnitude of the situation, he knew his life, and potentially the fate of two civilizations, was about to change forever. The cosmic chess game had begun, with humanity as an unexpected wild card. Secrets of the Stellar Architects. The alien vessel defied all known principles of physics and engineering. Its interior was a living, breathing ecosystem of technology and organic matter, with corridors that seemed to reshape themselves based on some incomprehensible internal logic. Marcus Reynolds found himself both a prisoner and a reluctant collaborator, his scientific mind racing to understand the complex beings who had brought him here. The lead entity, which Marcus had mentally labeled as the architect, continued to communicate through intricate electromagnetic patterns. Gradually, a desperate narrative emerged, a story of genetic extinction that threatened an entire civilization. Our species, the architect transmitted, projecting holographic representations of complex genetic structures, experiences rapid cellular degradation. Each generation loses critical genetic stability. You possess a unique genetic configuration that might provide the solution. Marcus studied the projections carefully. The alien genetic code was a marvel of complexity, with intricate molecular patterns that suggested an evolutionary history far more sophisticated than human understanding. Yet, beneath the complexity, he could see the signs of systematic breakdown, like a sophisticated machine slowly consuming itself. "Why me?" Marcus asked, his fingers unconsciously tracing the holographic genetic models. "What makes my genetic structure so special?" The response was a flood of information: genetic markers, cellular regeneration patterns, and adaptive mutation capabilities that Marcus's own body seemed to possess in a way that was statistically improbable. His years of research into extreme biological adaptations had inadvertently prepared him for this moment. The ship's interior continued to pulse and shift. Marcus noticed how the technological augmentations of the alien beings seemed to be failing. Microscopic fractures in their exoskeleton, subtle signs of systemic breakdown that they were desperately trying to hide. A secondary entity approached, its movements more mechanical, less fluid than the architect. Marcus recognized it as a different type, perhaps a technical specialist or medical officer. Its communication was more direct, almost clinical. "We have studied your species for generations," it transmitted. "Humanity represents an anomaly in galactic biological systems. Your ability to adapt, to survive in wildly different environments, to evolve rapidly. These are not typical traits." Marcus began to understand. They weren't just looking for a genetic solution. They were seeking the fundamental understanding of survival itself. But something didn't add up. The desperation of their mission, the elaborate kidnapping, the complex technological setup, it all suggested there was more to their story than simple genetic research. As if sensing his growing suspicion, the architect revealed another layer of their predicament. Holographic projections materialized around Marcus, showing the remnants of their civilization. Once magnificent cities now reduced to genetic wastelands, entire planetary systems abandoned, the slow march of their species' inevitable extinction. "We are the stellar architects," the transmission continued. "We have seeded life across multiple star systems, but our own genetic legacy is collapsing. You are not just a potential solution. You are hope." Marcus realized the true weight of his situation. He wasn't just a research subject. He was potentially the key to an entire civilization's survival or its final eulogy. The ship's internal systems continued their rhythmic pulse, a heartbeat of technological desperation. Marcus knew that his next actions would determine not just his own fate, but potentially the fate of two species. As he processed the massive implications, a plan began to form. If they needed his help, he would ensure he understood every single detail of their predicament. And perhaps, in understanding, he might find a way to turn the tables. The cosmic game of survival had just become exponentially more complicated. The genetic crucible, days, or what passed for days within the alien vessel's timeless environment, blended into a continuous stream of scientific exploration. Marcus Reynolds had transitioned from a captive to something more complex, a critical variable in the stellar architect's survival equation. The research laboratory was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Quantum genetic sequencers pulsed with bioluminescent energy, molecular manipulators moved with impossible precision, and holographic interfaces depicted genetic structures that seemed to dance and breathe. Marcus worked tirelessly, his mind racing between scientific curiosity and a growing sense of strategic opportunity. Your cellular regeneration capabilities are unprecedented, the architect transmitted, its complex electromagnetic communication revealing layers of scientific admiration and desperate hope. We have studied thousands of species across multiple star systems. None possess your adaptive potential. Marcus had begun to map the critical weaknesses in their genetic structure. The stellar architects weren't just facing normal genetic degradation, they were experiencing a systematic collapse of their entire biological framework. Each generation lost critical genetic information, like a sophisticated computer system slowly corrupting its own fundamental code. But Marcus saw something else. Between the complex genetic patterns and molecular breakdowns, he detected a subtle signature, a potential exploit that could change everything. "Tell me about your civilization's origin," Marcus requested, his fingers manipulating a holographic genetic model that twisted and reshaped itself in response to his touch. "How long have you been experiencing this genetic collapse?" The architect's response was a massive data burst: planetary histories, evolutionary trajectories, technological achievements spanning millennia. Marcus absorbed the information, his mind processing connections that even the advanced alien beings had missed. Their civilization was ancient, far older than human recorded history. They had seeded life across multiple star systems, acting as cosmic gardeners who cultivated biological diversity. But their own genetic structure had become a prison of complexity, each technological advancement further complicating their biological survival. Marcus discovered the critical flaw. The stellar architects had over-engineered their own genetic code, introducing so many technological augmentations that they had fundamentally destabilized their natural evolutionary path. Their desire for perfection had become their ultimate weakness. "You've been trying to solve a biological problem with technological solutions," Marcus explained, his voice carrying a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic revelation. "But technology isn't the answer. Adaptation is." The alien beings listened, or the electromagnetic equivalent of listening. Marcus could sense their growing tension, a mixture of hope and fear radiating through the ship's living systems. He began to construct a potential solution, not just a temporary fix, but a fundamental reimagining of their genetic trajectory. By introducing controlled genetic variability and reducing their technological augmentations, they might restart their evolutionary process. But Marcus knew this was more than a scientific challenge. It was a strategic opportunity. If he could provide a solution, he could also negotiate, not just for his own freedom, but for humanity's protection and potential future interactions with this advanced civilization. The ship's internal systems seemed to pulse with a new rhythm, anticipation, perhaps even hope. Marcus Reynolds had transformed from a captive to a potential savior, and possibly the architect of an entirely new cosmic relationship between species. The genetic crucible was heating up, and the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Rebellion of the unexpected. The tension within the alien vessel had transformed into a delicate dance of scientific negotiation and subtle resistance. Marcus Reynolds had become more than just a research subject. He was now a strategic player in a cosmic game of survival. As he continued to analyze the stellar architect's genetic crisis, Marcus discovered something far more profound than a simple biological solution. He found a fundamental weakness in their civilization's entire approach to existence, a fatal flaw that went beyond genetics and touched the core of their technological philosophy. "Your problem isn't just genetic," Marcus explained during one of their intense communication sessions. "It's philosophical. You've become so focused on technological perfection that you've lost the essence of biological adaptation." The ship's internal systems seemed to vibrate with a mixture of tension and curiosity. The architect's response came as a complex burst of electromagnetic signals that translated to a mixture of defensiveness and reluctant intrigue. Marcus had been subtly manipulating their own technologies, using their advanced genetic sequencers and molecular reconstructors to develop a potential solution and a plan of resistance. Each interaction was a carefully calculated move, gathering information, understanding their systems, and identifying potential vulnerabilities. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While analyzing a particularly complex genetic sequence, Marcus discovered a hidden communication network embedded within the ship's living systems. It was more than just technology. It was a form of biological communication that ran deeper than the stellar architect's conscious understanding. "You've been monitored and controlled by your own technological infrastructure," Marcus transmitted, his understanding growing with each passing moment. "Your technological augmentations aren't just failing. They are actively suppressing your species' natural adaptive capabilities." A group of younger stellar architects, those showing the most severe genetic degradation, began to show interest in Marcus's theories. They were the outcasts, the ones most affected by their civilization's technological obsession. In Marcus, they saw a potential path to liberation. Secretly, a plan began to take shape. Marcus would help them, but on his own terms. He would provide a solution that would not just save their species, but fundamentally transform their understanding of biological survival. The ship's internal systems became a battleground of ideology. The older, more conservative architects fought against Marcus's revolutionary ideas, while the younger, more desperate members of their species began to see hope. "Your civilization has been treating genetics like a machine to be optimized," Marcus explained. "But life is not a problem to be solved. It's a process of continuous adaptation." He began to introduce controlled genetic variables, creating experimental sequences that challenged everything the stellar architects believed about biological optimization. Each experiment was a small rebellion, a calculated risk that pushed the boundaries of their understanding. The ship itself seemed to respond to these changes. Technological systems that had been rigid and controlled began to show signs of flexibility. Biomechanical interfaces started to reshape themselves, responding to the new genetic information in ways the architects had never anticipated. Marcus knew he was playing a dangerous game. One wrong move could mean his destruction, or worse, the complete genetic collapse of an entire civilization. But he also understood that sometimes survival required taking unprecedented risks. As the ship continued its journey through the vast darkness of space, a quiet revolution was taking place. Marcus Reynolds was not just a captive or a research subject. He was becoming the architect of a new cosmic understanding, a bridge between technological obsession and biological wisdom. The rebellion had begun, and its battlefield was written in the most fundamental language of existence, genetic code. The cosmic catalyst. The final confrontation was nothing like anyone had anticipated. What began as a desperate genetic rescue mission had transformed into a fundamental reimagining of biological existence. Marcus Reynolds stood at the center of the ship's primary chamber, surrounded by the most critical members of the stellar architect's leadership. The ship itself seemed to pulse with an uncertain energy, part technological marvel, part living organism on the brink of a radical transformation. "Your civilization stands at a crossroads," Marcus transmitted, his voice carrying through complex electromagnetic frequencies. "What you've perceived as a genetic crisis is actually an opportunity for complete regeneration." The solution he had developed was breathtaking in its simplicity and complexity. By introducing controlled genetic variability and reducing their overdependence on technological augmentation, Marcus had discovered a method to restart their evolutionary process. It wasn't just a cure, it was a complete biological reset. The oldest and most conservative of the stellar architects resisted. Their entire civilization had been built on the premise of technological perfection, of controlling and optimizing every aspect of their biological existence. Marcus's approach challenged everything they believed. But the younger generations, those most affected by genetic degradation, saw hope. They were the ones who had suffered most from their civilization's rigid approach to survival. In Marcus's radical proposal, they saw a chance at true adaptation. The ship's systems began to respond in unprecedented ways. Biomechanical interfaces that had been rigid for millennia started to reshape themselves. Genetic sequences that had been locked in destructive patterns began to show signs of flexibility and potential renewal. "You've been trying to solve a biological problem with technological solutions," Marcus explained. But life is not a machine to be optimized. It's a continuous process of adaptation and transformation. The final transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The stellar architect's genetic code began to rewrite itself, shedding millennia of technological over-engineering. Their bodies, once rigid and partially mechanical, started to become more fluid, more adaptive. But Marcus knew the process wasn't complete, and he had one final condition. In exchange for saving your civilization, he transmitted, you must understand and respect the fundamental principle of biological diversity. No more controlling, no more treating life as a problem to be solved. The ship's journey back to human space was tense. Marcus had become more than a captive or a savior. He was a cosmic catalyst, fundamentally changing the trajectory of an entire civilization. As they approached Earth's solar system, the stellar architects made their final decision. They would not just accept Marcus's solution, they would become its guardians. Their mission would transform from genetic engineers to protectors of biological diversity across the universe. The irony was not lost on Marcus. What had begun as his kidnapping had ended with him reshaping an entire civilization's understanding of life itself. When the ship finally came to rest near the Quantum Dynamics Research Center, where Marcus had been working, the world would never be the same. Humanity had its first true contact with an advanced alien civilization, not through conquest or conflict, but through the most fundamental of all languages, the language of life itself. Marcus Reynolds looked out at the familiar landscape of Earth, knowing that the cosmic game had changed forever. The universe had just become a much more complex and fascinating place. The ripple effect. 6 months after the extraordinary encounter, the world was still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what had transpired. Marcus Reynolds had become an unwitting ambassador between humanity and the stellar architects, a bridge between two radically different approaches to existence. The scientific community was in upheaval. Classified reports leaked slowly, revealing fragments of the incredible story. A geneticist kidnapped by an advanced alien civilization, who had not only survived but fundamentally transformed his captors. Government agencies worked overtime to manage the cascading implications of first contact. At the Quantum Dynamics Research Center, Marcus's former colleagues viewed him with a mixture of awe and suspicion. The man who had disappeared without a trace had returned changed. His understanding of biology, technology, and cosmic existence far beyond anything they could comprehend. The stellar architects had kept their promise. Instead of an invasion, they began a subtle process of knowledge exchange. Scientific outposts appeared in carefully selected locations around the globe, not as conquering forces, but as collaborative research centers dedicated to understanding biological diversity. Marcus spent most of his time mediating between human scientific establishments and the alien researchers. Their technology was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Biological computing systems that thought and adapted, genetic libraries that contained the evolutionary history of thousands of species from across the galaxy. It's not about superiority, Marcus would explain during his rare public lectures. It's about understanding. The stellar architects almost destroyed themselves by trying to control life. True survival is about adaptation, not optimization. The first tangible proof of their collaboration came unexpectedly. A breakthrough in genetic medicine emerged from the joint research. Treatments for previously incurable genetic disorders that had seemed impossible just months before. Cancer research took quantum leaps forward. Genetic therapies that could repair DNA damage became a reality. But not everyone was pleased with this new cosmic relationship. Nationalist governments viewed the stellar architects with deep suspicion. Military strategists spent countless hours analyzing the potential threat, despite mounting evidence of the aliens' peaceful intentions. Marcus discovered that the aliens' transformation was ongoing. Their rigid technological augmentations continued to break down, replaced by more fluid, adaptive biological systems. They were literally rewiring their entire civilization, guided by the principles he had introduced. One evening, as the sun set over the research center, a senior stellar architect representative approached Marcus. Its form had changed dramatically, less mechanical, more organic, with a flexibility that spoke of their ongoing transformation. We miscalculated, the being transmitted. For millennia, we believed control was the path to survival. You showed us that survival is a collaborative process. Marcus understood now that his kidnapping was never truly a random event. Some fundamental cosmic mechanism had brought them together. A chance to reset not just one civilization, but to potentially change the way intelligent species understood their place in the universe. The night sky seemed different now. No longer was it just a vast, empty darkness. It was a canvas of potential, of undiscovered connections, of life waiting to be understood. The true journey, Marcus realized, was just beginning.